We have people who are only looking out for themselves, and they aren't actively developing employees to take their place or to do their job really well. And I feel like it's a manager's job, it's a leader's job to be good listeners, to figure out where people want to go, and then to clear the roadblocks and make it happen for them. So my job is more than just the things that I do, but it's also how am I helping people get to where their potential can lead them. And that is the opposite of allowing someone to feel like they're pigeonholed. Welcome to the Archispeak podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. Each episode, Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and I have a casual conversation about all things architecture, and we invite you to listen in as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the blocks of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we stand around the water cooler and talk about why we love our chosen profession. It's time for some Archispeak.
I died in South Africa, only outlined my body in Tiffany blue. When I died, I drove right and swam with the dolphins and Lisa Frank.
Welcome to episode 54 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And first up, this show is sponsored by ArcCat and NCARB. We'll talk more later about them. But first, we got a couple of friends of the show. Friends of the show is back.
That's right.
And so first friend of the show for this episode is Emily Grandstaff Rice. And so we just want to say thank you to Emily for becoming a friend of the show. I've actually met Emily at the Equity by Design conference in San Francisco last year. So real nice person, and glad to have her on as a friend of the show. And our second friend of the show for this episode is Craig James. And Craig stepped up and donated $50, actually. So he probably gets his name read about 10 different times on the show. So we'll come back to mention Craig a few more times throughout this episode for his donation. So thanks again for Craig and Emily for donating to the show. It helps keep the show going, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you to both of you for becoming friends of the show.
And we also got a little note, I think through the feedback form on the website, from Nicholas Green, who has started up a new blog, and it's really aimed at architecture students, and it is called upwhenyouart.com. And the blog has a lot of good articles on it about just the student and the studio life, and what it is and what it isn't, and kind of just how to deal with it. So I think it was worth mentioning for sure. I checked it out, and I think that the name Up When You Art means, like, it's kind of referring to the all-nighter kind of aspect of working in the studio when you're in school. So it's got some great time management stuff on there. It's got some kind of reality check kind of stuff, like get up and take a walk, kind of just giving you different perspectives from someone who's already been through architecture school. And so I'm hoping it really blossoms into a huge resource for students, so that and potential students who are going to be going into college. I hopefully high school students will find it as well. So we'll do our little part here and put the word out. So everybody check out upwhenyouart.com and tell Nick that you heard about it on the show.
So what are we talking about this week?
All right, so we're going to be talking about getting pigeonholed, and getting pigeonholed really refers to monotony, right? It refers to getting stuck in a rut, always doing the same thing, project after project, year after year. And I hear it a lot through the people that I talk to that either practice near me, around me, online, that they feel like they're not growing in their job responsibilities, that maybe they got, I guess we'll talk about this, but maybe they got so good at something that they just keep being asked to do it over and over again. So we might talk about some strategies on how to get out of that, and what it really means, I think, just to be pigeonholed. So that's our topic for tonight.
I think it also, at least in my case, one of the things I wanted to bring up is when I graduated college, actually, I guess I should start before that, I never really envisioned what exactly I'd be doing after college or for the rest of my career. But through school, you rarely spend any time doing residential sort of architecture in school. You're always doing buildings of one nature or another, but always some sort of public and typically larger scale. Sometimes we did some smaller scale projects in school as well, but I never really envisioned myself doing residential work and residential in single family type housing, and certainly not in the production world, which is what I spent a great deal of my career doing. And so when I got out of school, there really weren't any jobs. This was in the early 90s. The economy wasn't that great. And so it took a number of months before I was able to find a job. And really it was like the first person to offer me something or a job was like, okay, yeah, I'll go do that. So I started working with this small firm. And we were doing a couple of small residential development projects. And about 5 months later, I was offered a job at another firm doing basically the same thing, but actually getting some benefits. The first job was like, here, we'll pay you hourly, and that's it. You know, you get no benefits, nothing. And it was like, okay, sure, I'll take that. I need some work. And anyway, long story short, I started at that firm, stayed and went to this other one with benefits, and ended up staying there for almost 8 years. And it basically pigeonholed my career to a certain extent. I was perfectly happy doing it, so it wasn't like I was, not unwillingly doing this. But I had kind of visioned myself in school doing larger and more commercial type work, and then because of the economy and just trying to take a job, I got good at doing residential and residential production work. And I spent, 8 to 10, actually many years after that, doing that type of work. So I kind of was like, not really a forced pigeonhole, but it kind of fell into my career that was very different than I originally thought it was going to be. And I was okay with that. So it wasn't that wasn't what I wanted or wasn't okay with doing. Because I think if I wasn't, I would have made a change. And I think we'll talk a little more about maybe how you can change that. But it just seemed to me that it wasn't initially what I thought I was going to do. Ended up enjoying it, did okay with it, and kind of, even to this day, I'm still doing residential work. So it's a different sort of pigeonhole than maybe getting pigeonholed in a particular job, doing a specific task in a firm, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well.
I mean, you mentioned coming out of school, you weren't sure what you wanted to do. You really didn't do any residential or things like that. It started me thinking, okay, when we come out of school, do we really know anything about the profession other than what we've kind of went into school with a preconceived notion in the first place? I mean, we think about, I'm going to do all of these big buildings, or I'm going to do these beautiful houses, we're going to do this or that and stuff like that. And you graduate, you go into an office who may or may not be doing glamorous work or, something else, but you're not going to be starting all the way at the top doing all these great glamorous projects and things like that. You're going to be working at, hey, we need you to do presentation media, or we need you to do toilet room plans or things like that, And so early on, I can see where people start to get disillusioned, and then they kind of fall into this pigeonhole. Do I, am I going to do this? And they kind of worry that they're going to get stuck. So I know that's a little bit different than the pigeonholing that we're really kind of talking about. But I was just thinking, Neil, you said when you were in school, you never really thought about the residential. I mean, do any of us really know what we're getting into when we do this?
Well, that's a great question. And at least in my case, very probably more of a unique case than many people. When I first came out of high school, I started working for an architect. And so I spent like almost 4 years working for architects and attending junior college locally, and then moving on to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo and finishing up there. So in my case, I did actually have at least some sense because I'd been spending several years working for 2 different firms, actually almost 3 during that time. So I got a different experience than probably many students that may come straight out of high school, go to college, and then enter the workforce for the first time. So I at least had some sense, but I think a lot of people probably don't. And I think the first several years of working out of school in a firm are really probably the toughest years because you really don't know. You are getting pigeonholed, right? You come out of school, you probably have some talents that some of the people that working in the firm, that this is probably less true today than it was 10 or 15 years ago when many people in firms didn't really know CAD or didn't know some of the new software like Photoshop and SketchUp didn't even exist a little more than 15 years ago. So people didn't know these programs. So when you came out of school, if you did have some of this knowledge, that's where you went. It's like, okay, wow, this guy's really good with Photoshop, or he can build a model for us. This is cool. We're going to hire him. We're going to make him do that, him or her. And that's what you got stuck doing. And so it was very easy to feel pigeonholed doing more digital work. I'll just say digital work.
The graphic
for
media.
example, then maybe 10 or 15 years before that, you were stuck doing toilet room plans or that. So the monotony was a little different, say 20, 30 years ago than it was 5 to 10 or 15 years ago, but it's still a monotony. And how do you sometimes break out of that? And really sometimes you have to leave your firm to do that, which is not great, but that it does happen. And one of the first questions asked to me when I left one firm, the first question that one of the principals asked me was, "How long have you been here?" And it was like 3 years. It was like, it seemed that 3-year time frame seemed to be the time frame that a lot of people left. It's like, okay, I got my initial taste. I keep doing the same thing for you, and I'm good at it. So you keep me doing it, and you're not really giving me an avenue to break free of that and to grow. So I'm going to leave, and that's my avenue to grow. And that happens pretty frequently, I think. But,
yeah, and it's not in a firm's best interest to allow that to happen because hiring new employees is expensive.
Right. Right.
And so there's two ways to do this. Number one is you have to be constantly telling your supervisor or your partners what you want to be doing, whether you're doing it or not, or whether there's even an opportunity to do it or not. You still need to make it known. People need to know what you want to do. And so you kind of have to decide at least what the next thing is that you want to do. And you really want to try to find somebody who can be an advocate who can help make that happen for you. So if you're going through IDP and you need certain hours in something, this is a great way to gain experience and kind of navigate your way to figure out what you want to do in this profession. And then if you've been in the profession for a really long time, same thing applies. If you feel like you've been pigeonholed, you have to ask yourself the question, is it your own fault because you didn't ask for more responsibility, didn't ask to do something else? Are you just sitting around waiting to be told what to do?
Right. Well, one of the things that I always tell, I have a lot of, and I've said this before on the show, a lot of times when we get new, fresh out of school people that come to work with our firm, they usually get assigned to me, kind of the default mentor, which is good because what happens is they pair me up with, these kids that are coming out of school, or hell, there's a guy who's fresh out of school, but he's older than me. And yes, I do have him doing toilet room plants right now. But
it's good for him.
It's actually, that's the one thing that I actually need to be done on a project because everybody else has avoided doing it. But I always tell them, you are what you make your profession.
You create your own reality, right?
Yeah. What you want out of this profession is what you make it. You have to go and you have to be active in going and looking for additional work. I mean, you can't just go show up and say, okay, I'm here to draw my toilet room plans, or you want me to do some Photoshop work, or you want me to do, some InDesign, layout stuff, and then just collect your paycheck and move on. You've got to be active in actually wanting to shape what you want to get out of the profession. You can't just sit back and be just the recipient. You've got to be the active pusher. Wow, that's just a weird way of of explaining it. But hopefully, you guys don't understand what I'm trying to get at.
I totally agree with you about you creating your own path, creating your own reality. And I feel like maybe something we could talk about is ways to do that, because I know for a lot of people that's just really hard to say to somebody, this is what I want. And because there are a lot of supervisors out there who just don't care, right? And so you could be in a situation where you feel like you can't even bring it up, so what could you do in that instance?
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things, and, Neil brought it up because he was like, 3 years usually seems about the time frame where people start to move on. And I've noticed that through.
I would agree. Yeah.
I've now been with the firm I'm at now for going on 6 years, and I've seen a lot of turnover around the 2 to 3 year frame. A lot of it is, okay, I'm starting to understand what the profession is, and I either want more out of it or I want something different. I want a different challenge. And then, there's some that I'm just not getting, I just don't want to do schools, or I don't want to do this. I want to maybe try my hand at residential.
Well, yeah, part of it is figuring it out, what you don't like, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's understandable that as you come out of school, there's that learning curve to really kind of figure out what the profession's all about. Because early on, you may not be able to shape your own profession or what you want to get out of it because you don't really know. So, but as you start to develop it, you say, I like doing this, I don't like doing this. That's when you can really start to guide and push yourself into what you really want to focus on. Or a lot of times people will come out of school and they're saying, I want to do sustainability, I want to do these green buildings, I want to do this, I want to do that. And a lot of times we are hopefully getting to a point in the profession where it's just natural. Every building that we do is a sustainably designed building, green building, whatever you want to call it. And you won't have to ask to do that. Everything will be that way.
But there are a lot of clients who don't want to pay for that.
There are a lot of clients that don't want to pay for that. And we can, as we do in our office, design as responsibly as possible without tagging it or labeling it sustainable or green, because then they start to freak out about how much more it's costing them when it's really not costing them any.
Yeah, you just call it anything. Good design.
We just call it good design.
Yeah.
Then they're like, well, I don't want to be here because you guys aren't practicing, sustainable design. Well, it's part of the profession, and so.
But there are firms that totally do that, and they only do that, and they attract those clients and projects too.
Right. And then they attract those, those people who want to work there.
Yeah.
So, if they don't want to work for, say, us because we're not out there.
It's not like one of your top things. Yeah.
Right. We're promoting good design, and through good design, we're doing best practices of sustainability. But, not always, we've got plenty of people who, as you said, don't want to pay for the green label. But, so they want to go and work for the green label, firms.
Which is cool. That's a cause worth going for, right?
Absolutely.
But you have to, again, decide to do that.
Yes.
So that you aren't stuck doing something that maybe you're not good at, or that doesn't work for you.
I think that something that everyone should do if you're working at a firm is there'll always be a review, right? I mean, an annual review typically, right?
There should be.
There should be.
You hope so.
If there's not, you need to ask.
That's a red flag.
If it's not happening, that's probably a red flag. Time to move on. But if it is happening, that's your opportunity to talk about what you want to do. So, for instance, kind of,
I think there's way smaller opportunities before that too. You're not waiting just for that.
No, but I was going to go back to what Cormac was mentioning about, even sustainability. If that's your big interest, bring that up at that point. talk about it, get a feel from that firm what their interest level is.
Bring it up in the interview while you're...
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely bring it up in the interview.
But you may not know about that, right? When you first start, you may have an interest, but anything you may not know about, if it comes up or you develop this interest in whatever aspect of architecture it might be, if it's not happening at that firm at the time that you're already employed, let's assume we've already been employed here, bring it up in that interview, talk about it, and gauge the interest level. And there's oftentimes, from my experience, there may seem like there's a great interest level at the time you're doing this review, but then there's nothing to back it up. It's like, okay, maybe we need some capital investment to make this happen, or maybe there's some interest, but nothing ever seems to happen. Another 6 months rolls by, and your initiative that you're trying to push just isn't happening. And so you can either make that decision at the time where it's going to happen, and maybe I have to wait a little longer, but keep that dialogue moving. And that's what you were just mentioning, Evan, is that if it's not happening at the review time, that may only happen once a year, but there's nothing to say you can't go knock on the door or send an email and say, I would like to maybe have lunch with you. One of the firm's owners or one of the principals or the person working up above you, or maybe it's one of your mentors that is at the firm. Let's have lunch. Let's have coffee in the morning. And that's what your opportunity to bring that up. That's what we were mentioning earlier in the show about being proactive, about doing something and making decisions for yourself in your career, because that's what this is. This is your career. And it's okay if some of you out there don't want to be that active. I have met plenty of people that have worked at firms that I've worked with that are very happy with, okay, what's next? Okay, I have to do this project. Okay. And they sit down and they do it. And they don't make waves. They don't, they really don't want a big role. And they'll be perfectly happy drawing bathroom details, or, we always resort to the bathroom details as the worst thing. That's horrible. But it could be any number of different tasks. But some people are okay with that. So if that's something you're okay with, do that. It's okay. You don't have to be the rebel rouser or the person who's really taking the bull by the horns and just going out there and making a big wave. So that doesn't have to be you. If you're okay with it, you can do something different. So I think that's perfectly all right.
Let's do a sponsor break here real quick, because I want to get right back into kind of maybe some practical tips of how to do that kind of a thing. But first, let's talk about NCARB, who is a sponsor of the show this week, and they're back for a second round here. And they have a new little blurb here that we want everyone to listen to, because they've got a great new resource online for everyone to check out. So this episode is sponsored by the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, also known as NCARB, helping aspiring architects reach their career goals. Are you studying for the ARE? Check out the new ARE 4.0 community, a space where candidates can chat with our experts, share best practices, and watch exclusive prep videos. You can join today, and again, we'll have a link for this in our show notes at ncarb.org/ARE4community, all one word there. That's ncarb.org/ARE4community. And I think, Cormac, you tweeted about this, right? It's a Google Plus community?
Well, there's both that community and the Google Plus, which is an extension of the NCARB ARE 4.0 community. And so if you're on Google Plus, or you can go straight to the NCARB website, they're linked communities where you can reach out to other people taking the test, the experts at NCARB. It's really good. I mean, it's very similar to some of the other, communities that were out there and forums and things. This is one that's sponsored straight through NCARB. So you're getting real time, real information from the people who are administering the test and, putting out all of the information for it. So you're really getting frontline information that's top-notch quality to get you what you need to know to prepare you for the next test or the next test and things like that. So,
and I have to
it's
say,
really good community.
This is a big deal.
It is. It's huge. It really is.
This, again, I think I spoke about this last time, but this shows how NCARB is changing the way that they're doing things and responding to what people have been asking for. So This is awesome. Go ahead, Neil.
I was going to just say, as you were talking about this, one of the challenges I had when I first took my exams was finding out information. How do I study? What should I study? And how should I prepare? And when I took the exams, they were starting to change. They were moving from the kind of holistic sort of exam to breaking it apart into multiple pieces. At least the 12-hour design exam was moving from one total exam to 6 different vignettes, I think they were. But it was still given as a 12-hour building design exam. And it was very difficult to find out any information. So this is very exciting for somebody like myself, thinking, wow, what a great resource that NCARB is providing here. And I know that there's perhaps some others resources that are out there now that didn't exist back a few years back when I took it. But what a great thing that NCARB is stepping up and providing a forum like this. So I don't know. I think this is really exciting, and I'm glad to see them doing it, and really happy that they're trying to get the word out by sponsoring this show. And so if all of our listeners can give them a shout out and let them know that they heard about this community and appreciate what NCARB is doing from Archispeak, we'd really appreciate that, because it really helps us out.
Yep, definitely. So thanks, NCARB, for sponsoring the show.
So real quick, Neil, before we move on, when you were taking your test,
that was like the Stone Age. I totally get it.
What was the best? What was the best stone for making wheels?
Cormac, you know as well as I do that you forget all this stuff right after you take the test.
Whatever stone you could find was the best.
I totally get why Neil can't remember that.
True. Exactly.
It was a million years ago.
All right, so let's jump back into this. I have a couple tips for people because this has worked for me, and I think this is probably something that is common knowledge, but a lot of people don't do this. I'm really surprised. Is if you have goals and dreams of the things that you want to do, whether it's in the job position you're in or it's 10 years down the road, you write them down. Spend some quiet time. Turn off your phone. Turn off your computer. Turn off the TV, maybe go somewhere intentional, pick out 5 things that you want to do and write them down, and then put them on a wall where you're actually going to see it. Don't file it away. Don't write it in the middle of your sketchbook somewhere, but put it somewhere where you're going to see it all the time so that you're constantly reminding yourself of what these are. The more you see these things, the more you're going to bring them up in conversations, whether that's with your supervisor or with your colleagues or with your friends, so that people around you know what you want to do as much as you're reminding yourself that you want to do other things. So that's one tip. The other tip is find the right people to hang out with. So whether that's going to be, again, somebody in a supervisor role, or it's going to be people that you meet online or people that you meet at a AIAS meeting or an AIA meeting, there's lots of networking to be done, and you can find people who are where you want to go. And I feel like if you can develop a supportive environment, whether it's in your office or not, or whether you feel comfortable doing it in your office or not, there are going to be people outside of that small circle who can help get you where you need to go. And so if you don't feel comfortable bringing it up to your direct supervisor, because for any number of reasons, other places to do this are to start writing blog articles about things that you want to do. You don't have to already be an expert in something to talk about it. You can talk about wanting to learn more about it and just start conversations. So those are a couple kind of practical things that I can think of. If you're the type of person who feels like you're just stuck in a rut doing the same thing over and over again, and whether you're comfortable or not bringing it up to the people directly around you, I think those are a couple ways that you can start to get out of that. And like Neil said, there are people I think who are perfectly happy staying inside their comfort zone, and that's where they want to be. But I will also caution that is, to me, what I see is those are the people who get laid off because they're not really nimble. They're not really adaptable. So, word of warning there.
All very true.
Let me expand on what you were just saying. When you start to develop that circle of other professionals that are, can kind of help you kind of shape the career that you want, be the agent of change. Be the person who, and if you're not sure how to do it within your firm, talk to these other people, the AIAS, the AIA, the local chapters. I mean, hell, forums like NCARB. There's all sorts of different forums out there where you can just sit and talk with other professionals. I mean, we've got a great networking community of architects and design professionals on Twitter that I feel like it's a couple thousand strong of different professionals that interact with each other on a daily basis, to whether it be to vent or to discuss different things. I mean, there are tools out there. But so then what it does for me is it energizes me to actually want to do something within the firm and make the firm, either improve on something that we're already doing, or maybe offer up solutions of how we could do it better. But there are things out there to basically give you empowerment to be the agent of change and help change it. Now, if it's just something, say, in your firm that they're just unwilling to do, and it's something that you feel extremely passionate about, then maybe it's time, and maybe this is a discussion for later, but maybe it's time to quit. Maybe it's time to move on to something else, or it's just something that you could really try to have within your own firm to try to make it better for make it better for everybody else. But don't sit on the sidelines, and don't just complain about it in private and say, oh, I really don't like this, or I really wish I could do that. Be the one who really kind of pushes you forward. Because, you're the only one who can really make your career what you want it to be.
Yeah, you have to care more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are sitting around waiting to be picked for the team, or waiting to be asked to do something. So when's the last time that you said, I want more responsibility. Here's what I did last time. Here's what I want to do the next time. And again, just being proactive about it, and either asking permission to do it, which, there's a 50-50 chance you're actually going to get to do it. Or if it's something that you feel like you can just do and then ask for forgiveness later, I think that's a great strategy. A lot of times people aren't even thinking about what you're thinking about. So if you just do it, you're showing that you're just willing to try things. And I think that says a lot.
So the other day, Thursday, I was driving home with my son from basketball practice. And I have no idea how or why it just popped into my head, and I started singing the old Toys R Us commercial, the I don't want to grow up, I want to be a Toys R Us kid one.
I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
So he looks over at me and goes, is that a real commercial? I'm like, yeah, it was from back when I was your age. And he goes, I really don't want to grow up. I'm like, oh, why don't you want to grow up? He goes, well, kids are a lot easier because, then you got to have a job and you got to basically, work just to have money and blah, blah, blah. So we started on this conversation. And, I was just like trying to give the fatherly advice, but also just try to, understand where his thinking was coming from. And it's something that we've all, either heard from, our kids or somebody else, or even professionals about, I don't just want this to be a job. I want it to be something that I enjoy. So that's where I had the opportunity to basically talk to him about the difference between a career and a job. And I think we've kind of touched on it here, where we're talking about people who are just kind of going to sit on the sidelines and let it be a job. And it's just for them, a tool for them to get a paycheck, to go in, do what they're told, and then move on. Or the career, the thing that people really enjoy and love and want to do, that's the ones who get actively involved. And what we're hopefully saying is providing options or ideas on how you can be the ones who, really make it the career, really make it something that you enjoy. And so I had the opportunity to really kind of sit down and kind of explain that to my son and tell him what it was. And I mean, I don't expect an 11-year-old to sit down and start figuring out what he wants to do with the rest of his life.
Hopefully not, yeah.
Hopefully not. Although I will say that oddly or sadly or weirdly already knew at least a couple years younger than him that I wanted to be in the architecture profession.
I think I hear that a lot, and I think I did too, but I didn't even understand what that meant.
Yeah. I wanted to be an architect before I knew what an architect was.
It's like, yeah, but because you form this different idea or this idea of what that is, right? And then when you get to college, for the most part, I would say for most people, it's, whoa, this is way different than I thought.
Yeah.
But it's also way better than I thought.
Yes.
And so I think it's just really crazy that you can have this urge to want to do something that's way better than you even thought.
And see, I'm glad you said that, because that's what I feel is what a lot of people, when they're coming out of college. So when we go into college, we have this preconceived notion, and then hopefully college develops this passion that makes it even better. But then when we go into the profession, after we're done with college, we've got this preconceived notion of what the profession's going to be, and it's completely different.
Yeah.
But then there's that, again, equal opportunity to basically foster that passion that you have a lot more, and then of course grow and develop, and then get out of the pigeonhole of being the guy who comes in and just does the Photoshop or does the CADing and stuff like that, and then really kind of gets involved with it. I mean, I know we've kind of sort of not talked about, specifics of, well, I'm here and I'm doing schools, but is this all I want to do? It's not, I don't think that building types are necessarily what pigeonholes us, because I was having this conversation with somebody about a project that we're going after, and it will be one of the most complicated projects that this office in its 50 years has ever done, because of all of the different challenges that the site, the existing buildings, the program, and everything else kind of have. And I'm salivating. I'm just, if we get this job,
down, boy, down.
It's mine. I want it. I mean, and I want it because I want the challenges. I want the things. And yeah, it's just, I was about to say, yeah, it's just a school. I actually love doing schools. But for me, I get excited about the challenges that building types. And so I don't ever feel that any one specific building type is what pigeonholes us. It's what we do within the process that tends to kind of like, because there's always downtime. It's like, oh, I've got to do all of these CDs. Sometimes CDs get very monotonous, but it's a part of the process, and I don't consider monotony of certain processes as part of this pigeonholing. I think it's this almost kind of funk that we put ourselves in that we can never really push ourselves out of, because we've kind of fallen into the blah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
One thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of going back to when you're first starting your career, maybe those first few years. Many people feel that, or you may even feel this yourself, I'm doing bathroom details, I'm doing construction drawings, and that's all I'm getting an opportunity to do. But one thing I would like to point out about that is, in order to do some of the, some of the more fancier things, I want to do design. Let's just say I want to do the design, right? That's the fun stuff, right? That's what everybody wants to do.
That hurts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm kind of paraphrasing that. I'm just kind of saying that I want to do something. Let's just say I want to do something else than what I'm doing right now. But what I want to get at is, I want everyone to realize that doing those, and I'll go back to the bathroom details, doing those bathroom details is critical in understanding all of the things that go into a building, whether it's residential or commercial, that allow you to design. Because when you're designing, I'll say that's the example here. When you're designing, you have to design the bathrooms, right? If you don't understand the clearances involved in laying out the bathrooms, which you developed because you spent 6 months drawing them, if you don't know that, then you can't do the design, or whatever design you do is basically going to come back, and somebody who's then drawing them is going to come back to you and go, okay, this doesn't work because I need another 5 feet in each direction. Oh, well, we can't have. My point is that doing some of the more monotonous work, and I think we've talked briefly about this in past shows, is that you learn the nuts and bolts about how to put together a building, how to put together a set of drawings, how to become useful,
how pieces go together.
How pieces go together, how to be useful for that firm. And I think that's why those first 3 to 5 years is really tough, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, the older you get, the more you know that the more you don't know. I mean, it's insane.
Exactly. And so it takes that time to. And so I encourage anyone who's either just getting out of school this coming fall, spring, or maybe you got out a year or two ago and you're kind of going through this struggle right now with the firm you want. If the firm is clearly not where you want to be or not doing the type of work you want to do, clearly make a change. But if there's potential with this firm, and you like the people, you like the environment, but you have to get through that tougher period where you're doing more of the monotonous work. Maybe you're not going to the meetings, because you're the low person on the totem pole, so to speak, and so you're not being able to go. Well, one thing if that's like the case, go to your supervisor, go to the project manager and say, I'm willing to donate my time, for that hour or hour and a half or whatever, to go to a client meeting. I'm going to shut up. I won't say a word. I just want to be there. Now, the opposite side of that is sometimes the project manager may go, yes, I'd like to do that, but we've already got 2 other people going, and having you go as well.
We just physically can't have that many bodies in the room.
No.
I hear that a lot.
Maybe you can, but here's the opposite side of that, because I've heard this before, and it is true, is that the client may have this perception of, holy crap, I'm paying for how many people to be in this room?
Right.
And so sometimes, but that's okay. If that is the reason, then
it's a real reason.
It's a very good reason, and you need to know that. And if that's the reason, that's okay. Then say, then maybe there's another opportunity, but make it known. Make it known. If there's something you want to do in that firm, and it goes beyond just the monotony part, but once you kind of, you spent 2 to 3, you spent those 5 years, and you can grow, you feel you can grow, make it known. You have to make it known. Because if nobody knows that's what you want to do, then you're never going to be able to do it.
Actually, one of the easiest ways to be able to get to be invited to some of those clients' meetings, volunteer to do the meeting minutes.
Yeah, there you go.
You'll
do something that no one else wants to do.
Project manager will be there. So fine. Write everything down that everybody says, because I find myself, if I'm at a solo meeting where I'm the only person from our office there, and I'm not only having to run the meeting, have conversations about everything, kind of keep the flow going with the agenda and everything else, reviewing old meeting minutes and stuff, and taking meeting minutes, that's really hard.
And soak it up. Just listen.
Yeah, and then when you're going back and going through the meeting minutes to record all of the meeting minutes, have that conversation with your project manager, the project partner, the partner in charge that's, working on it, that you went to the meeting with. Have a conversation with them about, what does this mean or what does that mean? Engage. Have the conversations. One of the things that I also wanted to bring up is, if you're unhappy with the place that you're at, and you're like, well, I haven't really gotten all of the experience that I wanted to get, and you're getting ready to, you feel like it's time for you to make a move. Think about one thing. And this one thing is, what are you going to be bringing to the next firm if you were unwilling to engage and push yourself to learning all of that? Now, there are firms that they want to pigeonhole you into one particular thing, and you're unable to learn or do that. that's one thing. But if you're unable or unwilling, or let me say the unwilling, to push yourself to learn more, but you're frustrated with the place you're at and you feel like you're going to move on to something else, sit back and think about what you're actually bringing to the next firm. Are you bringing the same thing of what you're doing at the other one that's making you unhappy? Or are you bringing in kind of this new reinvigorated spirit that you want to really push to, learn more? So you've got to weigh the balance of, is it going to be more of the same? Or is this really going to be where my career takes off?
Well said. Yep.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely.
Well, let's do another sponsor here. Let's talk about Arcat. We were just talking about drawing up those bathrooms, and I can think of several examples of times that I've gone to Arcat for doing that very thing. So, would you like someone to draw CAD details for you? Would you like someone to create BIM objects for you or write specifications for you? And would you like this person to do it for free? Well, you're in luck because Arcat has already done all of this. You can search the Arcat libraries for these products and more free of charge and no registration required, which I think is the big one here, to download content. I was just showing somebody this week. They were looking for something, and I said, have you been to Arcat? And they go there, and they said, oh, do you need to create an account? I said, no, and they looked, they definitely were interested at that point.
Yeah.
So Arcat has created a website devoted to you, the building professional, to find building product information fast and hassle-free. Check out Arcat today at arcat.com. That's ARCAT.com. And I'm assuming that means architectural catalog, but arcat.com is a great resource. So everybody go check it out and let them know that you heard about Arcat on the Archispeak podcast.
And in Arcat, thank you again, because I looked up and found some acoustic block information. And where was the first place that I went to look? Arcat.com.
Yeah. So thanks, Arcat. The last thing that I wanted to, maybe we wrap up the show, is taking a different perspective. I feel like the whole episode has been kind of from the perspective of the people feeling pigeonholed, but I want to take the perspective of the supervisor position because I feel like it's important for people who are in that position to be good listeners, to always kind of just have your ear to the ground, hearing what people are saying, even if they don't directly work for you. What is the general feeling of the morale in the office? What is the general feeling of somebody who works for another supervisor that you could run a play for them? How can you help people out? I think that's really what it comes down to is how can we help develop people who are feeling like this? And I have several examples, and I'm sure you guys do too, but when people leave the firm, they're not just leaving the firm, they're leaving you, right? Because you didn't provide something for them. And it's rampant in this industry where we have people who are only looking out for themselves, and they aren't actively developing employees to take their place or to do their job really well. And I feel like it's a manager's job, it's a leader's job to be good listeners, to figure out where people want to go, and then to clear the roadblocks and make it happen for them. So my job is more than just the things that I do, but it's also how am I helping people get to where their potential can lead them. And that is the opposite of allowing someone to feel like they're pigeonholed. And I just wanted to talk about that to kind of wrap up here.
Well, one thing I mentioned earlier is if you're the pigeonhole talking to your supervisor, your project manager, and getting involved that way, whether it's at your annual review or at any other time. And I think what Evan is talking about is if you are the supervisor, the project manager, the owner of the firm, you need to do the opposite of that, or you need to be that person. The complementary
side of it, yeah.
The complementary side of it, yeah, not the opposite, but the complementary side of that. Invite people out to lunch. Sit down and have coffee with them in the morning. Or
walk around the office and talk to people all the time.
Exactly.
Do that FaceTime. It's so important. I have examples of that too, where I would say talk to people and they don't know a thing about you. And
Yeah.
but that's a supervisor's job, I feel like, is to know their people.
Right, right. And I'm going to expand on that just slightly. Recently, I was up for reappointment on our local planning commission, and I want to use this as an example in that this was something that I really wanted. It's somewhat of a political process, and you had to get out and talk to the people that are going to be the decision makers in this process. And so where I'm going with this is, as much as you may see yourself, I'm at this firm, I'm doing this job, and I'm trying to do a better job and expand my job. These are life lessons that you can apply in everything that you do. So it's not just getting out and talking to, whether you are the employee or the employer, talking amongst themselves, getting to know you. But this also works and applies outside of the firm in other aspects of what you're doing, whether you are a den leader at your kids' Cub Scouts, or in my case, trying to be on the planning commission and being involved in my local community in that aspect, or just reaching out to the new planning commissioners that have been appointed and getting to know them, because you're going to be working with them on a weekly or biweekly basis, and you need to get to know them so that you can work better together and reach goals that you're trying to get to. And so these are all, we may be talking architecture specifically, and how do you deal with being pigeonholed at a firm or in your career. But this goes beyond just architecture, and it goes out to everything that you do in your life. And that may be kind of obvious, but I think sometimes you need to point that out.
Yeah, it helps to hear it again and again. Definitely. Well, you said it all.
We said it all. So let's wrap this one up then. And I'm just going to say that if you do have questions or comments, please share your experiences. If you were pigeonholed, how did you break out of it? Are you pigeonholed? What do you feel that you can or can't do about it? Come to archispeakpodcast.com, leave comments on this episode, reach out to us on Twitter at Archispeak. On Twitter, which is ARCHISPK. But if you've really got a compelling story, how you were successful, let us know. We'd love to put it on the show. So reach out to us and give us a call, leave us a message, 415-484-8496. We enjoy doing that, and we've kind of, nobody's been calling us for a while, so we need some love here. Let us know you're out there. Let us know you're listening. Share your stories with us, and we'll put it out there for everybody else to learn from.
Yep, that's why we're doing this.
Absolutely.
That's why Cormac is doing this.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Wait, we're not getting paid? Dang it.
No.
Hey, and we're getting closer to the AIA convention, so let's get those conversations going about what we're all going to do when we get there. We want to know who's going to be there, who's a listener to the show. We might have some special stuff to do there. So let us know. Tweet us if you're going to the AIA convention in Atlanta.
Does anybody want to host us? Buy us some barbecue?
We're up for barbecue for sure. It's totally paleo, yeah.
Let us know, and definitely reach out and let us know if you want us to be there, and what we can do. Hopefully meet up and do some things there. So
yeah, we'd love to meet people.
Absolutely. Well, with that, guys, thank you very much, and we want to remind everybody to stay subscribed. And thanks for listening.
Go to iTunes, leave a review if you like the show. If you don't like the show, email Neil. And thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I died in South Africa. All the outline, my body in Tiffany blue. When I died. all you can bet.